Okay, so now we're going to solve by factoring when our A coefficient is not equal to 1. And so I want to make sure that you remember to check for your GCF first. This is a little different than when A is equal to 1, so it's just going to be a step that you're going to have to remember to do. So what we're going to do is we are going to check our GCF for 2, 6. I guess what I should do first is I'm going to rearrange my quadratic. So I'm going to move that -4 term over, so I'm going to get 2x squared plus 6x equals plus 4, because it's going to change sign, equals y, but since we are replacing y with 0, I'm going to go ahead and do that step all in one. So I'm going to put 0, but I need to know that it really is replacing y. So my y is now has a value of 0. And so now I'm going to find my GCFs of 2, 6, and 4, and I can only do this 2 at a time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the GCF of 2 and 6 first. So math over 9, 2, 6. Remember, you can only put in 2 numbers at a time, and they both have to be positive. And I'm going to find the GCF of those 2 numbers. And so now I'm going to take my first GCF. I'm going to repeat math 9 over. I'm going to use my first GCF, and I'm now going to find the GCF of the first GCF and 4. So this 2, now I'm going to use that common factor of 2 and 6 to see if 4 and 2 have a common factor. And they do. So my GCF is 2. So now this is going to change up my trinomial. I'm no longer going to factor 2x squared plus 6x plus 4. What I have to do now is I have to divide out a 2 from each of my coefficients. So 2 divided by 2 is 1, so that's going to leave x squared. 6 divided by 2 is 3, so that's going to make that plus 3x. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. So my new trinomial that I am now going to factor is no longer 2x squared plus 6x plus 4. I am now going to factor x squared plus 3x plus 2 because I have divided out each term by 2. So I no longer have this trinomial anymore. So now we're going to play x games with our new a and c. So when I multiply the a and c coefficient, I get a positive 2. And my b coefficient is a positive 3. Again, we are using the new trinomial to factor. So now I've got to think of 2 numbers that add to 2, that multiply to 2, but add to 3. So I'm going to clear this out, and I'm going to say 2 divided by x. I'm going to go to my graph, or my table, and 1 and 2 are the only numbers because now I see that 2 and 1 have switched. So it's got to be a positive 1 and a positive 2. So now I'm going to start filling in my table. So I'm going to take my lead coefficient of the trinomial we are factoring. Again, we no longer have a 2x squared because we've divided by 2. So our lead coefficient, lead term is now x squared. I am going to write in my constant. Again, this is from the new trinomial, so it is a plus 2. And now I'm going to use my x game numbers to fill in my diagonals. And those are going to be 1 and 2, and they have to add together to make the middle term of my new trinomial, which is 3x. So it's going to be plus x plus 2x. I could write 1x here, but 1x and x are the same. So now I'm going to fill in my rows and columns. So the common term of x squared and x is x. So now I'm going to use multiplication. X times what is going to fill in x squared? That would be x. X times what is going to make plus x? That would be a positive 1. And what times x is going to fill in the box for 2x? This would be a positive 2. So now my factors are x plus 1 and x plus 2. However, I'm not done because I did take out or factor out a 2 with my GCF. So that 2 is going to come in front of my rows and column parentheses. So I actually had 3 factors in this problem. I had a 2, I had x plus 1, and I had x plus 2. And so now we're going to take each of our factors and we're going to set them equal to 0. So I'm going to start with 2 because it is a factor, and I'm going to set it equal to 0. Well, does 2 equals 0 make sense? No, 2 is not equal to 0, so this is not a solution. So 2 is not a solution of my quadratic. X will not have a value of 2. Now we're going to take the next factor, x plus 1, and we're going to set it equal to 0. So the value of x, when I add 1, I end up with the final answer of 0. What is the value of x? And hopefully you said -1. And now you're going to take your final factor of x plus 2, and you're going to set that equal to 0. So what could the value of x be so that when I add 2, I end up with a final answer of 0? And the answer is -2. So these are my solutions to my quadratic equation. Again, 2 is not a solution because 2 is not equal to 0. So I'm going to check in my calculator because I can always use my calculator to help verify that I'm on the right track. But when you type it in, you will start with the original trinomial, not the trinomial with the GCF. So I'm going to type in 2x squared plus 6x plus 4, and I'm going to hit graph because I want to see, will I get 2 x-intercepts, which means I'll have 2 solutions. And you can see it does cross twice. Now it's hard to see what the exact crossing points are for the x-intercepts, so I'm going to go to my table because I can also look for my x-intercepts, my solutions, my roots, my zeros in the table. And remember, you're looking for a y value of 0 in your table. And since x is a -1, let's go up to where x is -1. Is y 0? Yes. When x is -2, is y 0? Yes. And since it crossed twice, I know I'm supposed to get 2 different answers, so I know I'm on the right track. I can also check when x is 2, and you can see clearly that y is not equal to 0, so that tells me that I was right, that 2 is not a solution. It is not a root. It is not a 0 of my quadratic equation. So I have solved this by factoring.